guys, welcome back. This is Jenny from Polly's Paper Studio. Today's project is a tutorial and a scrap your stash video. So I am really reaching into that scrap bin today, going for some pattern papers that I've had for quite a while, and I was inspired to create my own ephemera from that floral pattern on the paper. So I did some fussy cutting and some layering, and I am quite pleased with how the card turned out. So let's make this together. So I found this pattern paper in my stash, and why I liked it is obviously the colors are really beautiful. It's very vintage inspired, and it also has full floral images. So you could cut this out and there isn't any overlap of another flower on top of it, so you can get the whole image. Now, this paper comes from a very old paper pad that I had in my stash. It was originally 12 by 12, but as I do, I like to cut down the larger pieces so that I can flip through it and have all these 6 by 6 ready to create with. And so I really liked the floral and the color. I chose to cut out 2 of these, and often when I cut out the fussy cut images, I do leave a little bit of a border, but in this case I ran into other flowers or the green background, so I just clipped that right up to the flower image, and then I put them on some spacers. So this is going to act as a bit of a dimensional embellishment, and giving it a little bit of depth helps to keep those paper patterns separate. So I decided not only to use the paper for the floral image to cut out, sort of like ephemera, I'm going to use it as my pattern paper as well, because it already coordinates and it helps me to get through a little bit more of this stash. So I've got more to go through, but I think that if I cut these into the larger flower shapes, I'll be able to turn these into nice card embellishments for some simpler cards. Okay, so the frame on this I created, this is a circle die that nests. So there's a bit of room here, and you just want to take a bit of washi tape. This is so easy. Everyone does it, I think, but in case you need to see it, just nest those together with the equal amount of spacing. Tape that on so that it will hold it in place, and then run it through your die cutting machine. Once you have that, it will look like this, and then you can use a nice finish. I chose this gold embossing powder and heat set it so it would be a little bit sparkly, and that is going to create a nice border for Cut Apart Sentiment from the new Cartabella collection, which is going to be my focal image for this card. So let's work on the card itself now. The card base is all set. It's just got some coordinating paper patterns inside and a little spot to leave a sentiment, and I'm going to use gray matting for this, so I'll just build these layers and then add it to the top of that card base. This is more paper from the stash. This is My Mind's Eye, I believe, and this has a very non-contrasting neutral sort of pattern that's an all-over pattern. You want to choose those when you have an area that's not going to show as much, so that you know that all the pattern will be seen around it. I've got some foam here. This is going to be a spacer between these layers, and that will help to keep the dimension going and keep the paper pattern separate. So I've got some double-sided adhesive on that, and just for peace of mind, I do want to put down a bit of the wet adhesive because foam needs a little bit of extra help. So this will be between our first layers. Because I've got gold embossing on that frame for the top, I want to add that in another space here, and this is just going to be a secondary border. I'm not doing gold for all of the layers, but I think it helps to pull that color out from the center and give it a bit of a more cohesive look. So that's just gonna go right on top of that foam, and the wet adhesive is really holding it together, and the double-sided adhesive is just tacking it in place while it sets up. Okay, next layer is more of that gray cardstock. This is sort of a dove gray, and it's got a pretty linen effect for a texture. It is pretty subtle, but it does look nice and adds a little bit of detail. Now here is that beautiful floral from our focal paper, and I really like the text here. It makes sense to me to have that going in and up, so I'm just adding that. Okay, so our base is all set. Let's add it to the card front. Just center that, leaving a nice border of that card base showing. In the spirit of scrapping my stash, this was a piece of paper that was literally on my desk from yesterday. I did some simpler cards, some clean and simple cards, and this was just a scrap left over, but it fit the die cut perfectly. So this is a fishtail banner, and I thought that little stripe would add some great graphic detail. So I did not get a chance to make a video with those cards, but I will leave a link in the description if you want to check them out. I've got a simple doily here. It just has a scallop on the outside and a solid core, so that's going right in the middle. And here is that sentiment. This is from the Carta Bella collection I was speaking of earlier. And then a frame that I cut and heat embossed like I showed. I think for the purpose of placement, I do want to just sort of lay these flowers in where I think I want them, because I have a couple of extra details I want to add, which are these leaves. Now, these are the Tim Holtz skeleton leaves. They were too big, the whole die cut, so I just pulled the leaves off and joined them back together in a size that made sense for this card. And I don't know if it needs to show a lot, but just a little bit of extra detail will be very nice. So let's put that right here for the first one. And then the second one will go down at the bottom. You see just a little bit of the scallop edge of that die cut is showing because it wasn't quite large enough, and so I'm just gonna disguise that cut edge with these leaves. Okay, one more detail I want to add are some glittery circles. Now, I made these cute little flowers for those clean and simple cards, and I had to use a portion of the flower die that cut the centers, but it didn't only cut one, it cut 3 at a time to get the right sizes. So I had some left over that were sitting on my work desk, so I thought maybe instead of sequins, this might be a fun addition. Now, I think if I tuck the larger ones in a little bit behind the leaves, they will be less noticeable. Yeah, that looks nice. And then I'll just use this other little one as kind of like a fun little accent in the middle. So I'll put that down with some of that Tombow glue. Here's our first flower. I think if you had some fun metallic finished cardstock, you could very easily skip the first step of that frame where I used the embossing powder to give it the shiny finish. You could just as easily cut it from glitter paper or shiny metallic paper if you have that on hand, but I really just wanted to use up what was on my desk, and because I was using that thicker cardstock, it made sense just to go ahead and use that there. But use what you have, of course, and make sure you're not adding to the scrap bin if you can avoid it. So here's that second cutout flower section that was put up on those spacers to create some dimension. What I like about this card, I think, is that it is just a little bit vintagey, but at the same time it has a newer, fresher kind of feel because of that fun sentiment and the stripe here on that banner die cut. So last but not least, I'm just going to put a simple bow on. I don't think anything giant and loopy would make sense here, but I do like that to finish off that frame. So that is all for our Scrap Your Stash card this week. If you enjoyed this project, make sure you give me a like, leave me a comment. I will leave links in the description box below for all our social media handles. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye!